there are a lot of myths surrounding autism. So could you tell us a little bit about what really is autism? What are its features?
Yeah, there's three main features of autism, and the first thing, and the reason why I have worked with children with autism, is that we do see delays in their language development. That's one of the features of autism. And we also see some unusual or delays in their social development as well, so that those looking behaviors, that interest in hanging out with people and engaging with people. And we see sometimes repetitive or unusual behaviors. So those are the three things that we might see with a child with autism, that those things need to be present in one way or another in order to get the diagnosis.
Okay. Some people think that autism is the same as intellectual disability and mental illness. Now, could you explain for the benefit of our viewers how these disabilities are different?
Yeah, that's I can see that's a common misconception, and I think probably as up until about the 1980s or even the 70s, many people felt that intellectual disability was the same as autism. So the children were treated in the same way as someone who was slower, and we might not expect as much or rapid progress of the development of skills. But children with intellectual disability, what we typically see with them is slower development. With kids with autism, what's quite exciting, and I think one of the reasons why we are seeing increased interest in them, is that with good supports and early intervention, we're seeing many of these children develop language skills, sometimes quite rapidly, and also developing social skills and decreasing some of these repetitive or unusual behaviors with good supports and with good therapies.
Right.
But what's really important is, and we see more progress if the children are identified very young, so that they can get these interventions early on in life.
So what I hear you saying is that the earlier we pick it up, the better it is to help these kids and to make sure that their development can progress in a more typical way.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. So how early can autism be picked up?
Well, as early as probably 12 months.
Okay.
I think that's the earliest that research scientists are able to reliably detect autism. I think typically what's happening is it's a little bit later in most clinics. But what's really interesting when we ask parents when they come in, when they're concerned about their children's development, many parents actually are concerned about their children's development before the 12 months of age. So they have an inkling that something's not quite right in terms of their children's development. So it's so important for parents to, if they have a concern about their child's development, to make sure that someone, a professional, a pediatrician, speech-language pathologist, a psychologist, actually takes some time to look at them, to possibly give them an assessment or an opinion about that.
Right. So if it's as early as 12 months, then possibly it's not really speech delay that would be a presenting feature of autism. You would be looking at the other early communication milestones which you have spoken about, like the social
the social
interactions.
One of the number one red flags for autism is responding to their name. So usually children before 12 months, even though they're not talking yet necessarily, they should be responding to their name. It's really one of a good red flag for autism. Okay. So when you call them, Do they respond to you? And children don't respond 100% all the time, certainly
Yes.
if they're busy with something, but most of the time when you call their name, are they responding?
Okay. So, how is autism different from hearing impairment? Because if the child cannot hear properly, maybe then too they will not respond to their name. So, how would a parent kind of make a difference between
A distinction.
a
Yeah.
distinction?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, hearing impairment can get, initially, it can be confusing. So parents can do a couple of simple things. Children often read a lot of clues from the context that they're in. So a parent might be deceived and think their child is responding to their name, but they might just be noticing the parent that is present. So a thing that a parent could do to see if their child has a hearing impairment is stand behind them and make sure the child can't see them and call their name. Make sure you're out of view and see if, to see if your child will turn around, or even play little noise games, little crinkling of plastic paper to see if the child turns around with some unusual noise in the environment. So there's little tests you can do, I think, to see if it's hearing impairment or they're really not responding to their name.
Okay. And why is it important to diagnose autism early? Because, you know, it's difficult for parents. No parent likes to be told that there's, you know, something wrong with their child or there's a problem. So, you know, parents sometimes delay going for assessments. But especially with autism, it's important that it is diagnosed early. So could you tell us the importance of early diagnosis?
Well, really, I think what we're finding now is that early intervention at the behaviors that child will develop are important, but really what we're finding is that it actually is a neurological condition as well. So the earlier you get intervention, you're going to get better brain development and just better development. So you want to get in early because there's lots of hope, and there are many professionals who have some excellent skills at helping your child develop, which is better than delaying it until a child's maybe 5 or 6, because they may have developed behaviors that are very, very hard to change when the children are much older.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Smith. That's a lot of important information. There's a very important question that I'd like to ask you, which is linked to the local context. Now, in India, every child is exposed to at least 2, if not more, languages. You know, India is a country of multiple languages. So how does this affect the development of children's language? Is it a good thing, a bad thing? What do you think?
Well, ultimately it's a good thing, but for a child learning language, it's very challenging. So I'm going to give you the kind of advice that I might give in a Canadian context, but I think it's very different in an Indian context. So the idea now, when you're learning a second language, is when you have delays in your language or are challenged by it, that parents should use at home their mother tongue. So the language that is spoken in the home, that's the language that they should use with the child. So if they get suggestions from the speech therapist or the psychologist or the behavior therapist that they might be working with, they should try those games and activities and in their home language. However, what I've noticed here just is that it's a little bit more complicated than that in India, because I think at home sometimes it isn't just, say, Konkani that's being used. It's blended with a bit of English and maybe another language, you know.
Yes.
So I think it's pretty complicated here, and I don't know that I know exactly the correct answer. Right. But my inclination would be whatever the language is at home, that's what you should be using to promote your child's language development.
Right. And it seems that for children who have typical language development, okay, they actually learn all the different languages.
Yeah.
Because they know whom they should speak to in English and who speaks to them in Hindi and so on.
Right.
So eventually they learn all the languages to hear, understand and speak. But that's for children with typical language development.
Right. Yeah.
Now the other situation we have in Goa is that the medium of instruction, which for the most part in all the private preschools is in English. And then when they move from the first to the fourth standard, they learn quite often either in Konkani or Marathi as a medium of instruction, and then move to English again from the fifth standard onwards. Now, I am told that most parents want an English education for their children because they see this as a key to the wider world. So if the child was speaking a home language which was not English, and the child was studying in an English medium school, what could parents do at home to support the learning of English in school? Are there any things that parents could do?
Yes, I think there are. And sometimes maybe possibly the parent might not have a complete grasp of English, so they may want to use some supports to help them give really good models for their children. And my number one suggestion really would be to go to the library and take out some children's books.
We have a lovely one
here. This is a great one, My Mother's Sorry. And so what a parent could do is read the words to the child exactly as they're written, and then you have the good grammar being modeled for the child in the sentences. So after a time reading this, my mother's sorry is long like a train. You could read it exactly and maybe track the words so the child has an opportunity to look at the separate words. So you might read it completely, but the next time I would look at the book, I might just follow again the child's line of interest. So if the child said, boy, then if I was a parent, I would go, boy, and just copy the child. Or in the next picture, the girl is climbing, and the child might say climbing. And so the parent could just repeat and interact and take turns with the book at the child's level of interest as well. But it's the interesting thing about literature is certainly after grade 4, most children learn their new vocabulary from books. All children. English children. So reading is so important because that's where we learn our new vocabulary. It's really incredibly rich and an incredible opportunity.
Right. Thank you. That was a very comprehensive answer. Well, we have very little time left. So since today is World Autism Awareness Day and we are commemorating that day, my last question to you is, what is your message to parents who have children with autism? Because it's something very devastating for them. And with all your experience in this field, what would you like to say to them?
I think that they need to have hope, and that it's actually wonderful to get to know their child with autism. I know it's a different journey of development, but a parent needs to have hope that there's hope for development, that they can develop and progress and make a lot of good gains, and it's an opportunity to get to know them, to go on that journey with them.
Right. So there are lots of things that can be done.
Lots of things. And the exciting thing for me in coming to India is that there are so many fabulously trained professionals like yourself who are doing some amazing work in autism, and there's many opportunities for parents to work with highly trained professionals who can give them some tremendous advice and guide them to help their children develop.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today, and on the behalf of all the viewers, I thank you wholeheartedly, and I hope you'll come back to Goa soon. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Keep watching Prudent Media. Thank you.